Welcome to episode number 29 of Hoop Talk Fanatics. I am here with 94.1 WIP's John Johnson, and I'm excited to have him on as the Philadelphia 76ers season is around the corner, and I'm interested to hear what his thoughts are on this upcoming season. So, my first question is, what are your thoughts on the upcoming season?
Well, I mean, it's tough with the Sixers, right? Because we've been waiting the last 4 years for them to get past the second round, and when they got Harden, those first 5 games, it seemed like he had turned back the clock, and then it's a question of whether Father Time took over or he was really dealing with a hamstring issue. Because in the end, the NBA is a superstar league, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the more superstars you have, the better chance that you'll have of advancing deep into the playoffs. And with that, of course, you need a supporting cast as well. And like signing, they say it was that Harden was saying that he gave the Sixers a discount. I mean, it's not necessarily the case. He helped allocate the money to spread it out a little bit in order to improve the roster. So they have far more depth than they had at this time last year. I'm curious. I mean, in the end, it's going to come down to your best three players, Embiid, Harden, and Maxey. And then as a supporting cast, when they have to jump in there and get their bench roles, the reserve minutes, if they're able to hold the fort. I'm very intrigued to see what happens with Harden because
Mm-hmm.
this whole offseason's been all about skinny James Harden. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've heard this before, him fluctuating in weight and all, but he's a year older. The 82 game schedule is a long, long time. You don't realize that. And then the playoffs are the real grind because things get, it's double the physicality in the playoffs in the best of sevens. So I'm optimistic. I mean, far more than I was at the end of the season, but we'll see. I mean, continuity is a big deal and health is just as important. I mean, they have a chance. I mean, Joel Embiid he's a unicorn. He's so unique in every way. James Harden, if he's able to turn back the clock, even if it's a few years, and then if Maxey continues this growth, they have a legit shot in the East. But I mean, it's hard to make that jump yet when we've yet to see them get out of that second round.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the new additions?
I like them. I mean, they just made the Montrezl Harrell signing official, which is nice. I mean, he's a nice bench piece. He can play 4 and 5, and he's a smaller 5, but he can hold his own. Several of the other bench guys that they added, they are improvements. I mean, the guys that were here, they just like I don't want to call anybody out, but they were regular season players. I mean, there's a huge difference, which we've learned, going through the
Mm-hmm.
whole process and getting back to the postseason and seeing what the difference is. There's a huge difference between a guy that can fill a stat sheet in the regular season and have good games in the regular season versus the nationally televised audience. Your season could be on the line. Who shines and who folds. And the
Mm-hmm.
guys they've added are certainly better depth than what they had. The question is, I mean, it's easy to say that on paper,
Mm-hmm.
but seeing them if they can gel together, and again, if everybody can stay healthy, they're better than they were when the season ended. I'll say that. I'm not ready to say Eastern Conference champions, but they certainly I'm much more optimistic right now than I was at the end of the year.
What do you think about Paul Reed in the rotation, and do you think that we will see him more as the season progresses, or do you think that he's not going to get that much?
Yeah, I sadly I don't think he's going to get that much. Like Doc
Mm-hmm.
Rivers is not a fan of playing young, inexperienced players to begin
Mm-hmm.
with, and especially on the team he's coaching where the expectations are there to win right now. It's a shame because Paul Reed, uh, throughout stretches of the regular season last year, when you go through those injuries, that's when he should get those opportunities. You give him a few
Mm-hmm.
minutes here, a few minutes there, see if he can capitalize, and then if he shows signs of something, you give him a little bit more, a little bit more. And I guess it was the 81st and 82nd regular season game. It was like the Paul Reed coming out party. And Doc
Mm-hmm.
Rivers was quick to just shoot everybody down, saying, "We're not having the Paul Reed victory tour." And that's when everybody becomes super judgmental of Paul Reed because he had no action. And then he's thrusted into playoff action, and everybody assumes, oh, you got to be great instantly. It's not how it works. If you've had minimal NBA experience, you have to become accustomed to the game, the ups and the downs of it, being able to go through those motions day in and day out. And above all else, we talked about that physicality that changes in the playoffs. And for someone who's very young, who got next to no playing time in the regular season, to just be thrusted into the playoffs and expected to perform at a top level, it's a bar that can't be met. And it's a shame for Paul Reed. I mean, again, we never know how a regular season is going to play out. Guys do get hurt, and guys get called up and sent back down to the Blue Coats. So he'll get some playing time, but unfortunately, I don't think he'll get nearly the amount he deserves, especially in the regular season where you have room for error. Because that's how Doc Rivers does things. He's not a big fan of playing the young, inexperienced guys.
So what are your thoughts on the first 8 games on the schedule?
For the Sixers?
Yeah, for the Sixers.
The first 8 or 80? Just 8?
Yeah, 8.
I'm not sure. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember. Is it Boston the first game? I can't remember who the first game was. I think they opened up the season against Boston, right?
Yeah, I think it's Boston. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. I can't remember the exact 8 games, but they have a ton of nationally televised games this year. This year between ESPN, ABC, NBA TV, etc.
Yeah.
So they're a huge talking point. Yeah, they're a huge talking point around the league. I don't know. The first 8 games, you want to hit the ground running, get everybody excited. The first 10 or so, unless you start out 0-8 or 0-10, I don't get a whole lot out of it. It's as the season goes on, is there a chemistry and a continuity where you start to see that smooth flow where they know each other and they know where they're supposed to be on the court. When one guy's lacking, has a bad game, you see 2 or 3 guys be able to pick up for what that guy's unable to do that game. The NBA, sadly, which we've seen too, especially in the NBA, you see guys getting maintenance days. They get the days off, even though it's only 82 games, because they want to make sure they're as healthy as possible. So they're going to slowly ramp up and then have time, days off in the middle of the season. The first 8 games don't mean a lot to me. Like if they went 4-4, I'd say, all right, well, it's not great, but whatever. There's still 74 more games to go. My only cause for concern would be if they went like 1-7 or 2-6. Otherwise, it's a long season.
I was just looking at their schedule, and they open up with I think it's Boston, Milwaukee, and then San Antonio for the first 3 games.
Yeah. It would be cool. It's obviously they're big. It's great to talk about, leading up to all 3 of those games. Now that you're going to be facing your former head coach and Brett Brown, who's back under Popovich's staff. It's they're cool storylines to follow, and you can get excited early on in the season. But the way the team looks or their opponent looks in the first week or the first month of the season, there's a chance they may look completely different when you fast forward to April. So you take it's almost a grain of salt unless they look like an absolute disaster.
So my next question is, what is your prediction on the whole division?
Oh boy. Boston's still a great team. I'm thinking of it in terms of conference. It's amazing. Like we have, we still have divisions in the NBA, but all that matters is the 1 through 8, or with the play-in rounds, I guess you go 1 through 9, 1 through 10. Milwaukee is still an incredible team. I still put the Sixers until proven otherwise, even though, Max, you'll be a year older and you hope he grows further in his game. But until I have proof that I see James Harden turn back the clock a little, being able to have that little bit of burst of speed, be able to fool defenders, and in addition to being able to facilitate the basketball, Sixers, I still have like the 4 or 5 seed. The top 3 are always going to be those couple that are. I keep harking back to Milwaukee. like Miami's still going to be good, but they're a year older. They lose a player who's now on the Sixers. Um, the Knicks are still going to be the Knicks. They just have this. The Dolans have this confidence about them that is just ill-advised. I'm trying to think off the top of my head since we still have camp doesn't get underway till the end of the month, but Milwaukee's still the best team in my opinion. It doesn't matter, who's in the NBA Finals last year, or who won last year. It's still Milwaukee. They have the best all-around depth of any team in the Eastern Conference.
So my next question is, what are you most looking forward to watching throughout the season?
I would like to see. I got to cover Joel Embiid when I was covering the Sixers full time. Going through the whole experience of them drafting Embiid, going through his navicular fractures, both of them, him being very immature about it. Just but then again, he had a whole lot of stuff going on. He lost his brother tragically. He's thousands of miles away from home. He had nobody here in the United States with him. He had dietary issues where he would just eat the wrong stuff and drink sugary drinks. And seeing him refocus and become this amazing player that he is now. The one thing that's challenging in the NBA, especially because it's a superstar league, is not to buy into your own hype all the time and not to become hyper focused on yourself as opposed to the team in general. And one thing we've seen with Embiid is, he talked all the time, oh, defensive player of the year. Then it was, oh, MVP. And when he didn't get it this past season, you saw the effect the game after in the playoffs. Like he was all mopey and he was all bent out of shape. Because I understand every player has a personal goal and it's a huge achievement to have. And with that comes acclaim and you get more money and endorsements. But Joel Embiid, if now that he's technically in his prime, but we don't know how much longer he's going to be around because he's a huge man that plays like a point guard, so he's always going to be susceptible to injuries. I would like to see, and he's going to be of my utmost focus, a focus of Joel Embiid where he is all about winning a title and nothing more. The whole hell with the MVP, hell with Defensive Player of the Year. I want to get the number one seed in the NBA and I want to win a championship. Like I want to hear win a championship out of his mouth before he says anything else. I don't want to hear about, well, I want to do this season. I want to win the scoring title again. I want to win the MVP this time because I got screwed because Nikola Jokic won it again. I want to win a championship. I don't care about personal awards. If those words continue out of his mouth in training camp, when the season starts, throughout the year and into the playoffs, that's when mentally that's all that matters to him now. And that's his sole focus. And that's what I want to hear because he is such a unique talent. I still remember in the 2 years that he was just, he wasn't playing. And I used to arrive at the arena 4 hours before the game. And I would sit there courtside and I watch Embiid and Brett Brown just work on all of his mechanics and what needs to be fixed and how to improve his game for when he is fully healthy. And I remember sitting there saying, my goodness, I remember, you see highlights of him in Kansas. I'm not watching all these Kansas games. I'm aware of how talented he was. And prior to his injury, he was going to end up being the number one pick in the draft. But watching a man of that size and saying, my God, I've never seen someone like as large as him with that much pure athleticism and talent. So he is so unique in every way. And if his career is long enough, he's a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer. But in the end, in terms of you can have all the fame in the world, you can win a couple of awards, but if you don't win a title with all that talent, the perception of many is that in the end, you're a losing player. You never won it all, despite all that talent that you have, because you had stretches of selfishness and immaturity. So, long story short, Embiid, he is my total focus this year. If you get him with a single focus of championship and to hell with everything else, I mean, he's such an impressive athlete to watch.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think if he takes if he takes his talent every game and he does what he does best, I think that there's no doubt in my mind that he has the chance to win the most
Hmm.
valuable player of this upcoming season and overcome what he hasn't overcame last season. And it's all gonna come when he has to like get the ball in the paint and do what he does and have the
Hmm.
ability to either step in and dunk the ball or pass it in the
Hmm.
uh like in the outside the paint. And I just feel like if he does that and he's a big asset, uh the sky's the limit for him. And I I got a really big feeling that he's gonna win it all this year.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, as we both just said, he's got it all. I mean, he's just
Mhm.
I've never seen like Giannis is an amazing player, but Joel Embiid can do so much more than Giannis. The difference is Giannis has a mentally his focus is entirely different than Joel Embiid's,
Mhm.
and that's why Giannis has been more successful.
It's gonna be very interesting to see how this develops. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk Sixers. And I hope to have you back on to recap a game some point during the season. And it goes Sixers.
Oh no, thanks, man. It was a blast. Yeah, anytime you want.
Okay, thank you.